We are not here by accident. We are here by divine purpose and divine pattern. We are here because of divine purpose and divine pattern. There's a very well-known scientist in Cambridge who's now retired, John Polkinghorne, one of the leading quantum physicists of his time. In his book, One World, he taught, I had the privilege of taking a couple of lectures from him many, many years ago, talking about the whole notion of the universe and its coming into being. And his book, One World, is actually a summary of those lectures that he gives. But here it is. He makes this comment. He said, do you know how exact this universe had to be in its fine-tuning in order to bring about the reality of humankind? The exactitude demanded, he said, is something like this. It's like taking aim at a 1 square inch object at the other end of the known universe, 20 billion light years away, and hitting it bullseye. The margin of error was so small, he says it would be like taking aim at a 1 square inch object at the other end of the known universe, 20 billion light years away. Such exactitude. Dr. Chandra Vikramasinghe, professor from Cardiff in Wales of Sri Lankan origin, made the comment that the enzymatic makeup in your body and mind, just the enzymes, the possibility of those enzymes in bringing together what we have life is so remote, he said, it's like 1 in 10 to the 40,000th power. And his colleague, Frederick Hoyle, said, the chances of that are as slim as a tornado going through a junkyard and producing a jumbo 747 as a result. Fine-tuning inside your body and in this very universe itself. This is the exactitude of what the created order is all about. 3.1 billion bits of information in your human DNA. 3.1 billion bits of information. Can you imagine a dictionary developing because of an explosion in a printing press? That is what you call specified complexity, the created order. What does that mean? It means two things that I want to deduce from that. When you talk about creation, it means you have intrinsic worth. You have essential worth, not given by state, not given by government, but the essential value you have, and there is a reflective splendor. I want you to listen very carefully to this juxtaposing of two thoughts now. And it is this. When you think of what it is that Jesus said about what it means to be human, you realize the exactitude was so extraordinary, because a man comes to him and says to him, is it all right to pay taxes to Caesar? And what did Jesus say? Do you have a coin? The man said, yes. He said, give me the coin. He picked up the coin and looked at the man and said, give to Caesar that which belongs to Caesar, but give to God that which belongs to God. The man should have had a second question. That question was, what belongs to God? He looked at the coin. Whose image? Caesar. Give to Caesar that which belongs to Caesar. Give to God that which belongs to God. The man should have said, what belongs to God? Jesus would have said, whose image is on you? That's the extraordinary reality that God gives value to you and to me. But I also want to remind you, while Moses gave 611 or 613 laws, Jesus reduced them to 2, to love God and to love your neighbor as yourself. Because of the first, the second necessarily follows. Without the first, the second is with its feet firmly planted in midair. You love your neighbor as yourself because of the vertical dimension of loving God. But here's what I want to point out to you that's very critical. You are not lost in a sea of humanity. Your value is both general and particular. You have a particular value that is distinctively you. You see, there is a particular value to you. Your name is given by those who help bringing you into being. You can always replace a worker. You will never, ever replace a person. Persons are unique. They are distinct. Don't anyone ever minimize who you are as a singular individual. Don't ever try to be somebody else. Don't feign at being somebody else. You are a person with a DNA, and God's image is on you in a general sense. God's unique gifting is in you in a particular sense. When I was 17 years old, I would never have dreamed that I'd be standing here at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta some years from now, talking to over 60,000 youth live and many online. Because at the age of 17, I was on a bed of suicide, having attempted to take my own life. And God, who's sovereign over the whole universe, tapped the shoulder of one man who had come to India from Calgary, Alberta, and told him to send somebody into my hospital room with a Bible. I'd never owned one. I'd never opened one. I didn't know if you told me there were 4 different gospels telling you the same story of Jesus. And here the Bible is being read to me by my mother, whose English was not that sharp, and she's reading from the King James language, and comes to the words of Jesus, "Because I live, you also shall live." And till this day, now at the age of 73, 56 years later, I stand before and I say to you, why on earth did a sovereign God care enough to speak to somebody to come into that hospital room and speak to me? The day you wake up and it dawns on you that you matter to God as an individual, that you never realize the dreams and the plans that He has for you, and the fulfillment He can bring in and through you, the majestic name that He holds is willing to indwell you. Think of this. He's dying on the cross to bring redemption to the whole world. To the whole world. To offer redemption. What is one of the last things He says? He looks at a young man and tells him to take care of his mother. I sometimes think about the cross and shut my eyes and try to see the cruel nails, the crown of thorns, and Jesus crucified for me. But even could I see Him die, I would but see a little part of that great love which like a fire is always burning in His heart. You are valuable to God. Don't ever minimize your individuality. The very word individual means you cannot be divided up. You are unique and a composite, fashioned in the image of God for a particular purpose. Creation. But you move from creation, an intrinsic worth and reflective splendor, you move to the incarnation, that Jesus is that eke homo. He reflects for you and me what it actually meant to be human. You will never see another life so pristine, so pure. I wrote a book called The Lotus and the Cross, an imaginary conversation between Jesus and Buddha. And I interviewed Buddhist monks and priests from many parts of the world. And I forget how many times I asked the question, who do you think is that quintessential expression of what life is intended to be like is lived? Many of the Buddhist philosophers and priests themselves would say, Jesus Christ. That's why even Mahatma Gandhi, who who was a devout Hindu, made the comment once. He said, "My problem with Christianity is that I like their Christ, but I don't like their Christian." Because of all that he'd seen wrong. Young people, nobody can shine the light brighter in our times than people like you. And when we talk about the incarnation, pour your mind into the scriptures to study the person of Jesus so that you will reflect that splendor. Two things about the incarnation: the absoluteness of the moral law and the supremacy of love. The absoluteness of the moral law and the supremacy of love. What does that mean? The moral law has boundaries. There is no such thing as free love. Free love is a contradiction in two words. Love was never intended to be free. So we see the supremacy, the absoluteness of the moral law and the supremacy of love. A few days ago, I was speaking in Los Angeles, officiating at a wedding of a young man I've known from when he was a little boy. You know, it's very hard to stand in front of a young couple making those vows. It's very hard to look at a beautiful bride and not have the tears fill your eyes because some dad is trusting his precious daughter into the hands of a man who in many ways is still a stranger. And so I said to them, "Do you know what your vows actually mean? Do you know what those vows mean?" And I looked at the young groom and I said, "Joe, she is paying you the highest compliment in taking you at your word. She's paying you the highest compliment of taking you at your word, because there's a binding of the law and there's a supremacy of love." The Bible uses 4 words for love: agape, storge, phileo, eros. Agape, God's love; storge, protective love; phileo, friendship love; eros, romantic love. Do you know that in Christian consummate marriages, it is only a Christian marriage there in every way that brings the 4 of these together in consummate expression: God's love, friendship love, protective love, and the love of eros in the consummate cleaving of one body to another, representing the one soul blending with the other. Mathematics may say 1 + 1 is 2. Marriage says 1 + 1 is either a million or just 1. You found your love and it's worth a million, but in reality, you do not die to your distinctiveness, but you do die to your selfishness. And so to you young men and women, I want to say this to you: the world has lost the meaning of what it really intended for the word love to communicate. We think it boils down to songs. We think it boils down to phrases and romantic terminology. Let me say something to you. Some months ago, I was speaking at a conference, and I was talking in some other context, and I said, marriage is really commitment, you know. And a woman about my vintage came to me and said, "I disagree with you. I don't believe it's merely commitment." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "At its heart, it is not mere commitment, it is sacrifice." I have to say to you, I was rattled a bit. I even discussed it with her. I said, "Well, you know, commitment involves walking in one will and so on." She said, "No, Ravi, what I mean is what I'm saying to you. It is sacrifice." And so I say to you, when we are talking about the supremacy of love, we are talking about the incarnation. What language shall I borrow to thank you, dearest friend, for this thy dying sorrow, thy pity without end? Oh, make me thine forever, and should I fainting be, Lord, let me never, never outlive my love for thee. On one occasion, speaking to the United Nations prayer breakfast, they asked me to speak on absolutes, a tough subject with many cultures in front of you, 18 minutes or so in which to do it and offend nobody. So I said, what are absolutes? We're looking for boundaries, points of reference. I said, there are 4 absolutes. we look for? Evil, justice, love, and forgiveness. Defining evil, defining justice, defining love, and knowing when we've blown it to be forgiven. I said, think of it. They're sitting, listening very carefully. What's this got to do with the gospel? Evil, justice, love, and forgiveness. I'm just trying to be kind to everybody. 5 minutes left. I said, I want to ask you a question. Where on earth did 4 of these converge at one moment in history? And they were just staring at me. I said, may I take you to a hill called Calvary, where the evil in the heart of man was shown, where the love of God was displayed, where God honors his own law in justice and brings grace to forgive you and me. On the hill of Calvary, the 4 absolutes absolutely came together. And may I say to you, there was a lineup of those ambassadors to shake hands. One man from an atheistic country that I won't name shook my hand and said, Mr. Zacharias, I don't like being here. I come from an atheistic country, and my family is not here with me. I'm a very lonely man. Every day I ask myself the question, why am I here? Why am I here? He said, today I found the answer. I came here to find God. I came here to find God. You may not know why you're here this afternoon or this weekend. You may be here with a friend. You may be here out of curiosity. You may be here that you really like some particular presenter or speaker or whatever. Do you know you possibly are here to make an appointment with God?